Welcome to the WTIM Morning Show. I'm your host, Avery Cooper. Your stream co-sponsored by People's Bank and Trust, where they put people first, and Landmark of Taylorville, where you always do better with Landmark. On the phone here with Jim Bohannon of the Jim Bohannon Show, which you can hear weeknights here on WTIM from 9 to midnight. Welcome to the program, Jimbo.
Hey, Avery, always a pleasure to be with you and all the good folks in Taylorville.
Great to have you here, Jimbo. Did you watch the Oscars last night? And by that, I mean, did you see the drama?
Yeah, well, it didn't exactly go 15 rounds. Actually, no. I did not tune in, but of course I caught all the replays this morning, so therefore I caught, I guess, all of the relevant portions of the Oscars, namely Will Smith and his slap and his later apology. So, yeah, I caught that much of the Oscars.
I mean, within a span of an hour, Will Smith smacks Chris Rock, receives an Oscar, talks about being a role model, and then has an apology. I mean, what? Oh my goodness. It makes me wonder too, like, is this going to be the standard going forward for what it's going to take to talk about the Oscars?
Well, that's a really good point, because let's face it, most people don't. I haven't seen the ratings for last night. I know they redid the format. I don't think they included the slap as part of that, but apparently they seem to think that rearranging the deck chairs would keep the Titanic from sinking. People haven't been avoiding watching the Oscars because of the format of the show. They've been avoiding watching the Oscars because they're tired of these big-mouthed dilettantes tearing down their country. That's why we don't watch the Oscars. And until you change the cast of characters and what they have to say, people are not going to be tuning in. But I find it particularly amusing that they were so hopeful. Well, we've redone the format. So what? Who cares?
Yeah. Who cares?
Saying the same trash about their country. I don't care what these people think, and I also don't find myself spending money to go watch their efforts either.
Fair enough. And I mean, gosh, in terms of controversies at the Oscars, you have Michael Moore talking about Iraq. You have this. Where do you place this controversy in the realm of the Oscars over the last couple of decades?
Well, it certainly was the most dramatic moment. I mean, let's face it, we haven't seen any outright physical assaults. I mean, the Los Angeles police even made note of the fact that Chris Rock has not filed any charges, but he is free to do so, and there's no real time limit on it. So,
yeah.
I mean, fortunately, there aren't that many witnesses, simply because not that many people tuned in, but enough witnesses, I suspect, to make the case stick. Of course, there's even talk now that Will Smith might have his Oscar taken away. I mean, that's apples and oranges.
Right.
You think you had the best male performance? Then fine, give him his Oscar, whatever. And I understand that the comment. I mean, let's face it, comedians say snarky things. And what Chris Rock said was probably fairly snarky about, if I dare mention her name, Jada Pinkett Smith. And don't slap me, Will. But nonetheless, I mean, that's what comedians do, okay? And goodness knows, if anybody ever pushed the envelope, it would be Chris Rock. I mean, that's what you get when you hire Chris Rock. Yeah, he's funny, and yeah, he's edgy. And this is what you expect. And it obviously struck Will Smith wrong. He did seem genuinely contrite later. I noticed him apologizing to the Academy and most of the Western world. He certainly did not apologize to Chris Rock, I noted. But
yeah.
Talking about how love can make you do crazy things. Whatever. I mean, I understand where Will Smith was coming from. The comment was rather snarky, but nonetheless, I mean, that's what Chris Rock gets paid to do. That's why Chris Rock has millions and millions of dollars for saying snarky things. So,
if I'm Chris Rock right now, I'm thinking, man, what's another joke I can tell that'll get Chris Rock or Will Smith to hit me again?
Well, seriously, I mean, right off the bat, I mean, Chris Rock is already rolling in money, but I guarantee you that nobody's going to cancel any bookings because of this. I mean, if anything, his rates may go up. I mean, I'm sure it didn't feel good, but it'll feel good when he goes to the bank. Is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, let's shift away from the drama and the tea, and let's go into something a little bit more serious. Well, it's been more than a whole month since Russia invaded Ukraine, and the Ukrainians are holding strong. There's lots of different talk of going on right now, maybe even splitting up the country into two, like a West and an East situation. There's still some diplomatic talks between Ukraine and Russia. Over the last month, Jimbo, how have you seeing the situation in Ukraine unroll?
Well, first of all, this has been a terrible embarrassment for Vladimir Putin, and NATO has been taking copious notes about just how terrible the Russians are. Good grief. Who knew that they were this bad? I mean, good grief. Russian soldiers so ill supplied that they have to start looting uh, uh, filling stations for food. Soldiers apparently sabotaging their own tanks. Uh, Soldiers, in one case, reported to have killed an officer, their own officer. I mean, the number of casualties. This has just been a disaster for Russia, and the Russian soldiers crying home to mommy. I mean, Vladimir Putin, who bills himself as Mr. Macho, this is just embarrassing. And as I say, NATO has been taking a lot of notes about just how bad this Russian military is. Unless Putin really thought that he was just going to waltz in. I mean, if he bought all this nonsense, I mean, calling a country led by a Jew a fascist country, good heavens. I mean, I'll grant you Vladimir Putin is something of an expert on fascism. Next to President Xi of China, he's the biggest fascist in the world today. But I mean, that he would be that delusional about all of this. It's one thing to spout lies to your own people and try to cut off outside news so they have nothing else to hear and nothing else presumably to believe. But it's something else to believe your own lies. So that's my first take. Number two, probably by now you've already had the Ukrainians recapturing territory, a second-rate power. I mean, Ukraine is at best a regional power, taking back territory from the vaunted Russian military machine. I mean, suggesting that they keep the easternmost provinces of Ukraine, that's about all they can get. Although I know one Ukrainian member of parliament is saying that that is unacceptable. We will not accept partition of our country. They might have to accept that. I don't know, but I do know that if Putin had this to do over again, I don't think he would have ever done it because he just was so delusional about what would happen. I mean, he apparently really believed all this nonsense. So the Ukrainians loved all those years they spent under Soviet oppression. I keep hearing so much about how smart Vladimir Putin is. I haven't seen it. This guy is stupid as can be.
And of course, when you talk about Vladimir Putin claiming that the country that he's invading is fascist, you're talking about how he claims he's denazifying Ukraine, right? I just want to confirm that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but
Right.
denazifying what? A country that has free, periodic, secret ballot, multi-party elections, as opposed to Russia, which hasn't had a fair election since Boris Yeltsin around the turn of the century, for Pete's sake. I mean, the stuff he says, if it were any other context other than people dying, it would be comical. This man is so brain dead, vacuum-headed, stupid. Good grief. I mean, he must live in a truly delusional alternate universe to believe anybody believes this nonsense.
Talking about President Biden and the way he's handled the situation in Ukraine recently, he went on record as to say there needs to be change in leadership in Russia, perhaps speaking a bit off cuff. What's your reaction?
Yeah, well, again, I think it was another case of him not phrasing it quite as well as he should have. He should have made abundantly clear. I mean, speaking off the top of his head, that's not a very smooth landing strip, for frankly, the top of his head. It's a little too pointy. But he could easily have noted that that we're certainly not talking about regime change here as instigated by the United States, and nobody thinks that the United States is going to suddenly drop paratroopers on the Kremlin. But certainly, Russia will never be treated as anything other than a rogue state and a pariah state until Putin is gone. I mean, there were ways to have said it that would not have required the walk back from Secretary of State Blinken, which in and of itself was probably as bad as the original Biden statement. Now we not only look like we're trying to assassinate Vladimir Putin, but it looks like that we're weak as well. I mean, this is the worst of all possible worlds. It's just remarkable the extent to which this administration can screw things up. And I have said before, I'll say it again. I do not believe the names Biden or Harris will appear on the Democratic ticket in 2024.
You believe then that there will be a different primary primary challenger that'll overtake Biden and Harris for 2024?
Oh, I do indeed. Mm-hmm. In fact, Biden, if he's at all smart, will simply say, I've had my shot. I've been president, and I'm 80-something, which he will be by the time that next election rolls around. And I'm going to call it quits at that point. I will not seek a second term. I think that if he's smart, that's what he will do. Hillary Clinton, let's face it, she still has a base, not certainly with me, but among Democrats, she still has something of a base. I think she's a factor in all of this. And one of the 2020 Democratic also-rans might be her running mate. I think she may very well wind up with the nomination. I don't think she's got a prayer of winning, but I think she might wind up with a nomination again.
Let me reintroduce you here, and then we'll continue our conversation after a quick break. That's Jim Bohannon of the Jim Bohannon Show, which you can hear weeknights from 9 to midnight right here on WTIM, your information station. Back in a moment with more from Jimbo after this. Welcome back to the WTIM Morning Show. I'm your host, Avery Cooper. Your stream co-sponsored by People's Bank and Trust, where they put people first, at Landmark of Taylorville, where you always do better with Landmark. I'm here on the phone with Jim Bohannon of the Jim Bohannon Show, which you can hear weeknights from 9 to midnight right here on WTIM. Great to have you here, Jimbo.
Good to be with you. Good to be with everybody in Taylorville.
Good to have you here. So, I don't know about you, but last week, toward the end of my week, I held my bracket funeral. I laid to rest my 2022 bracket after I didn't have a single team in the Elite Eight. Actually, I believe I had Kansas. That's it. That's all I had.
Well, I'd have to honestly look. I've stopped paying attention to my bracket was pretty well busted to pieces as well. I did have Kansas finishing second overall to Gonzaga, so Kansas technically is still alive in my bracket, but that's about it. I've had other number ones who had made it further. So it's been a weird year. Interestingly enough, after all the early bracket busting, you come down to a Final Four of a 1, 2 2s, and an 8. That's not that far off of what the brackets picked, but getting to the Final Four was disastrous for most people.
Absolutely. I picked Gonzaga. I picked, and this is my embarrassing pick because I wanted just like an 11 seed or something to rock everybody. I picked Virginia Tech. I thought they were really good. They didn't make it past the first round. I picked Arizona and Auburn. Yeah. Rest in peace.
Well, Auburn, Auburn was a funny team to figure. They kept winning, but they kept winning by little margins.
Yeah.
I never once saw Auburn play, and I follow Missouri, which is in the Southeastern Conference. I never once saw Auburn play when I thought, wow, that was a absolutely smash performance. It was, they survived another one. It was odd. It was, it would not have taken much for Auburn to have been a 9 seed. They had that many close games against teams they should have routed.
I felt that way a little bit about Illinois this year, but I got to be careful saying that out loud here in Taylorville.
There you are, knowing where you are. Well, they had a good team, obviously, but they didn't have a great team.
Yeah, it really felt like Illinois had all the talent in the world. They just couldn't quite put it together this year, and head coach Brad Underwood said as much. So that's how my bracket looked this year, and I think just about everybody. I saw somewhere like 0.2% of brackets pick this Final Four. Like 0.2% of brackets pick this. Oh, we lost Jimbo. Oh, geez. Well, anyway, I hope we can get him back here in the next couple minutes because we're running out of time anyway. Just kind of having a little bit of fun talking about our March Madness experience this year. He, of course, is a Missouri follower, and, well, they didn't really make many tournaments, if any. But, yeah, Jimbo picked Kansas to go to the Final Four. I did not. So good for him. Anyway, I think we got him back on the line. Sorry about that, Jimbo.
Yes, I'm back. I don't know what happened. We got momentarily disconnected there.
Yeah, we did. Well,
it's interesting. You see a lot more upsets in the men's tournament than you do in the women's tournament.
Looks like we lost him again. I'm really sorry about that anyway. Yeah, I agree with him, though, that you do see a lot more upsets in the men's tournament than the women's tournament. Feels like in the women's tournament, you have like a top, 20 or so that are really good. And then you have like 5 that are elite that nobody can beat.
Hello?
Yep, I got you now, Jimbo. Oh, geez. Yep, that's going to probably end this segment. I'm really sorry to Jim Bohannon. Really sorry to everyone listening out there. But yeah, in the women's bracket just feels a little bit lopsided towards the top. And then you have less upsets toward the bottom. All right. Yeah. Jimbo, wanted to give you a chance. I'm really sorry about that. Wanted to give you a chance just to conclude your thoughts here.
Yeah, to conclude my thought here. My thought is very simply that the women's talent is much more concentrated in a few teams. That's why you see so many of the higher seeds just crushing their opponents. Men's talent is becoming more balanced. So I think that's what we're talking about here. So
I do apologize to you, Jimbo, for all the technical difficulties towards the latter half of this segment. And yeah, you can listen to Jim Bohannon weeknights from 9 to midnight right here on WTIM. Thank you so much for coming on, Jimbo.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Your stream co-sponsored by People's Bank and Trust, where they put people first, and Landmark of Taylorville, where you always do better with Landmark.